you're doing that, I want to explain a couple things. First thing I want to explain is that between the Civil War and Reconstruction, we learned about Abraham Lincoln's assassination. Abraham Lincoln was supposed to be our leader and commander-in-chief as our country got reconstructed, so to speak. Okay? So we're going to look at a two-pronged focus question is, so what is Reconstruction and how did African Americans get help after the Civil War? So if you notice, Unit 1 consists of the Civil War and Reconstruction. So we've done the Civil War. Now we need to go through what Reconstruction means, okay? So copy down the focus question. You don't need to copy down what's in yellow for this slide, but in fact, I'll actually change these around so there's no confusion. I'd rather put this in yellow. And then the other one we're going to put into white. Beautiful. All right. So you guys are experts on the Lincoln assassination, and what you need to understand is he was supposed to be the guy that brings our country kind of back together, but since he gets assassinated, the whole kind of plan gets messed up. All right, so focus question is, what is Reconstruction? We'll spend the first 5-10 minutes on that, and then we're going to specifically look at African Americans after the Civil War, because after the Civil War, African Americans are going to have a lot of great things coming to them since they're no longer slaves. Now, there will be some things that go wrong, but at least at the start of this Reconstruction era, which lasts from the years 1865 to 1877, things do go somewhat well for African Americans early on. All right, so I'll give you another 30 seconds to finish copying this down. And then we'll go on to a new slide. All right, so let's go into what this term Reconstruction means. So in the chat right now, what does it mean to construct something? What's another word for constructing something? Don't look it up on Google either, because we should be able to know what this word means. Excellent, to build. So when you reconstruct, you rebuild. All right, so I'm on a desk right now. If I was to, this desk that I'm on right now, I built, put together myself, I constructed it. All right, if I was to take a sledgehammer and break the desk and then reconstruct it, okay, that's me rebuilding the desk. So our country has to be reconstructed. So what does that exactly mean? And that can mean a bunch of different things, okay? Our country has literally been torn apart by slavery. We fought a civil war. Now we're being rebrought together, all right? So let's go back and really go into what Reconstruction means. So copy these 4 things down, okay? Reconstruction means to rebuild, okay? So we're looking at rebuilding our country, but this goes a lot deeper than just literally rebuilding the country. So let me go through what happened when I was your age in 8th grade. When I learned about Reconstruction, I literally just thought that meant this was the time period where we reconstruct and rebuild the physical damage of the Civil War. But there's a lot more to that, okay? First thing is, we have to rebuild the way of life for African Americans in this country because a majority of them were slaves, a lot of them were mistreated, and this time era is going to be used to African Americans rebuild their identity in this society, okay? So we're reconstructing, we're rebuilding the way of life for African Americans, and that will be our focus for like the first couple of days of this second part of the unit. All right, how do we rebuild the way of life for African Americans? That's going to be some of our focus for now. Okay. Then, of course, we saw the March to the Sea. We saw the damage. We saw the buildings being put on fire. We saw all the physical carnage of the Civil War. We literally need to rebuild the buildings and the trains and the factories that were destroyed from the Civil War in the South. We need to rebuild those back up and reconstruct those. Okay, so that's the way I always understood Reconstruction, but you guys should start to know it as a lot more than that. All right. We have a new president. Okay, for those that don't realize this, when the president gets assassinated or leaves office or dies in office, the vice president takes over for the rest of the term. So in this case, Abraham Lincoln dies very early in his second term. So President Andrew Johnson, who was the vice president, now becomes the president, and we have to rebuild under Andrew Johnson. And what you'll learn about Andrew Johnson is he's not the same guy as Lincoln. He was actually from the South. He was someone that was sympathetic to the South. So Reconstruction was a very interesting time. It would have been a lot different under Abraham Lincoln. All right. And the last thing is we want to rebuild the North and South relationship with one another. Okay. We were people that had gotten into a huge war, the most damaging war in American history. The country, after the Confederate surrender, are brought back together. Now we need to rebuild that relationship. Okay, we've gotten into a fight. Yeah, Casanova. Johnson is technically the 17th president. Yes. Lincoln was 16. He would be 17. All right, so a lot of what this unit is dealing with the rebuilding the relationship between the North and the South, along with rebuilding the way of life for African Americans. And again, our focus will mostly be on rebuilding the way of life for African Americans today. All right, I think we have one more slide after this. Let me just see one thing. Yep, okay, we have one more slide after this. I'll give everyone another minute to finish copying this. All right. And then we'll go on to the next one.
Mr. Panio,
Yes.
how come the whole country trusts Andrew Johnson?
So that's an interesting question. The whole country doesn't trust Andrew Johnson. Actually, a lot of people don't like him at all. And we're going to learn about those people a little bit later on, probably on Friday. But he is, according to our Constitution, when the president dies, the vice president takes over. Now, Abraham Lincoln made him his vice president for his second term because Andrew Johnson was from the South, and he wanted to show the South that we want to have a good relationship with you guys when the war is over. All right? So this is an interesting situation. Now, I know what you're probably going to ask. Did Andrew Johnson kill Abraham? Excuse me. Did John Wilkes Booth kill Abraham Lincoln so Andrew Johnson could become president because he's from the South? And no, that was not the case. They wanted to assassinate Andrew Johnson as well. Okay? So please keep that in mind. All right. So one last slide, and then we'll get into today's assignment. Okay. So how do we rebuild that relationship with the South? Well, according to Lincoln, and we kind of know this already, he's going to go and do things a little bit differently. And what's amazing is he was not very popular for this decision. So after the Civil War, President Lincoln, again, you're just copying down the 2 bullet points in yellow, President Lincoln demands that what's up, Sebastian?
I had something to say to John Wilkes Booth.
All right, keep it appropriate.
Okay. So, John Booth, why did you have to kill Lincoln? Why?
I don't speak for John Wilkes Booth, but he obviously made a huge mistake for our country, as you could tell, because Lincoln was a very good president in a lot of different ways, and it obviously hurts, but he was not thinking he was just sympathetic to being a Southerner and wanted the Confederacy to win. So it's a good question, Sebastian. All right. So President Lincoln demands that the country welcome back the South with open arms. Now, this is a controversial thing because you just fought the bloodiest war in American history. Now the president's saying we're not going to punish the South. We're going to act like this war never happens. But I
think the South should be punished.
Well, you and Lincoln would disagree with Sebastian. Sebastian, the reason Lincoln would disagree with you is if you ever want to move on as a country, you can't hold these grudges. All right. It was a horrible thing, but the war was fought, the war was ended, and we need to really move on so we could heal the wounds from the war that has caused all of this.
Forgive and forget.
Right. Forgive and forget. And that is the way Lincoln did. Now, people like Sebastian, they were not happy. There was a lot of people unhappy with Lincoln's decision. He goes, but I know that people are going to be unhappy with this, but this is what we need to do. So this is days before he gets assassinated. He adopts a policy of amnesty. And it's an official pardon for people who have been convicted of a crime. A pardon is when, like, when you walk through the hallway and you bump into someone, you say, pardon me, that you basically saying, forgive me. So Lincoln is willing to forgive the South for what they did as long as we move forward. There's a couple of conditions they have to agree to. Like we know they have to now give up their slaves. But ultimately, Lincoln says we need to welcome back the South with open arms and we need to forget the Civil War happened. Now, as we know, Lincoln will be assassinated and the welcoming of the South in the country becomes a little bit messy. All right, because as you can imagine, many people that were fans of Lincoln when he gets assassinated are going to blame the Southerners for what John Wilkes Booth did. So that's going to keep the relationship very tense and rocky. All right, so Reconstruction means to rebuild, and America needs to rebuild its country physically and emotionally. All right, and we're going to look at the emotional standpoint to start. This is a question I have. This is a 7th grade question. If you want to make a change in our country, a change in our Constitution, you need to pass something. Does anyone know what you would pass if you want to make a change or an addition to the Constitution? Does anyone know what that's called?
Well, pass something.
They could pass a law, but if you want to make a change to the Constitution, it's called something else. Kelsey, that's a great guess.
Treaty.
It ends a war, but that's a good guess, but that's not correct. Starts with an A. Declaration, good try. No.
Amendment.
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 You got it.
Amendment.
Very nice. Good job, Jason. It's an amendment.
Yay.
I said it first.
Well, it's not a competition, but an amendment is a change or addition to the Constitution. So we need to make some constitutional changes for African Americans in this country because when the Constitution was written, many African Americans were slaves. They weren't citizens, right? They had these issues. We need to make official changes to the Constitution. So we're going to go to the legislative branch and we're going to ask them to propose a couple of amendments or changes to the Constitution. And that's what your focus is going to be on for today. So if you guys can, please open up the Google Doc. Well, there's 2 things you really should open up. Let's actually first open up the PDF. So it's going to look like this. Okay. Now, for my people here, you are going to notice you have what's called Roman numerals. So when you see Amendment XIII, that's the number 13.
I know what it is.
Well, I got to make sure everyone.
Slavery as a
XIV.
punishment for crime. Well, the parties shall have been duly convicted.
Let's try and go through what the numbers mean first. XIV means 14, and XV means 15. Hamza, you're like 25 minutes early. I don't even see you guys today, Hamza. We went over this. Wednesdays, I don't see 8 CE. Yep. So enjoy your study hall. All right. So we're going to go through each of these amendments. Now, these are the actual amendments, okay, that we're going to look at. Now, we're doing that tough. I know maybe you guys aren't the biggest fans, but we're taking the actual language and trying to put it into our own words. This is a skill we do a lot in this class. Not every day, not every week, but it's just something we do early on a lot, so you get used to it. So Amendment XIII is Amendment 13. You scroll down, here's Amendment 14. And if you scroll down even more, here's Amendment 15. So we'll do the first one together. You're going to do Amendment 14 and 15 on your own, though. All right, so what you have here is, I will share this other screen with you. Give me 1 second. So if you're looking at this tab, you'll notice we need to put Amendment 13 in our own words, okay? The only hint I'm giving you is that each of these amendments are going to deal with African Americans in some capacity, okay? So let's read through Amendment 13. I'm going to keep this screen up, but you follow along with the reading with me. And again, we'll put it into our own words. All right. So if you're looking at Amendment 13, Amendment XIII, no, we're going to do the first one together. It says, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Okay? So, slavery, okay, I'm going to write it in here. You guys can follow along. Slavery is now, it says, slavery is now not allowed to exist. Except what? What is the only time you could be treated as a slave in our country? And this is a very key thing that the amendment goes into, because if they don't write this, they're not allowed to have something in our country that is important.
If you commit a crime.
Excellent. Slavery is now not allowed to exist except if you are convicted, meaning you're found guilty of a crime. Because if they don't put that, ladies and gentlemen, if they don't put those specific words, then guess what? Jails technically are not allowed to exist anymore. Because when you're in a jail, you're essentially being treated as a slave. You have no freedom. You do labor. You're not paid for that labor. You're serving your crime in jail. So slavery is no longer allowed except if you are convicted of a crime. Now, I'm not going to give you the answer, but I want you to start to think, wait, say, Mr. Panio, hold on. Didn't we do this already with the Emancipation Proclamation? Didn't that already ban slavery? Remember, that's a trick. It does not ban slavery. So please keep that in mind. What actually bans slavery in our country, and the reason there is no more slavery, is because in January 1865, slavery was officially abolished and gotten rid of, not the Emancipation Proclamation. Okay? Now, Amendment 14 and Amendment 15, okay? Amendment 14 and Amendment 15, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to do the reading, try and put into your own words. Amendment 14 is a little bit tough. I think Amendment 15 is pretty straightforward. All right? So what happens for African Americans for Amendment 14? What happens for African Americans in Amendment 15? Okay? I'm going to give you 12 minutes to do it. If you finish early, you're not allowed to go anywhere. We need to go over these to make sure we're on the same page. And this should be an easy 100 when you guys hand it in. Okay? We'll go through the analysis questions when you're done. So do Amendment 14, Amendment 15, and then try and figure out these questions based off of your analysis of what these amendments are. Okay? So I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to take attendance. If there's any questions, please just write in the chat.
So we have to put all three amendments in our own words?
Correct. As best you can. Now we will go over Amendment 14 and 15.
Can we search the amendments up?
Nope. Nope. That's not in your own words, right? Use
No, I'm not to answer it, but just to see.
Like the words that we don't understand.
Oh, of course. Yes. If you go to Amendment 14, let's say, and you don't know what a jurisdiction is or a privilege is, then yes, you absolutely could. That's no problem. Okay? That's a good question.
And where can we find the amendments? Like their way of writing it.
If you are looking at the real work, the real amendment, you're going to click on the PDF that says the Reconstruction Amendments readings.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You're starting now, right?
Yes. Okay, guys, take 2 more minutes until we go back to go over Amendment 14 and 15. Okay, guys, 1 more minute. Okay, guys and girls, finish up your last sentence or wherever you are. We're going to come back to Amendment 14. It's going to be the same type of thing. I'm going to read it to you and just kind of quickly go over what it means. Hopefully, you're somewhat close, even if you're not there. If you do want to maybe share what you think Amendment 14 is, you could write it in the chat and we'll see if you're correct. All right, but going to, sorry, just on a different page here. All right, so Amendment 14, I'm going to read it to you again. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction of the United States are citizens of the U.S. and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge or take away the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection and the war. All right, so Amendment 14, okay, which I will be writing in here. Amendment 14 is African Americans can now be citizens of the country and have the same
Question.
rights as white people. Yes.
So like, if we get it wrong, can we just copy what you're saying, or like?
That's why we're going over it.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, if you got it wrong or you got it partially right and want to add to it, that's fine. That's why I kept you guys here to go over it to make sure we're all on the same page. African Americans can now be citizens. They have the same rights as white people. All USA citizens have the same rights, and that's yeah, Akira. That's pretty correct. Okay, that was pretty well said. But so far so good. Okay. So by law, African Americans should be treated the same as white people. Now, as you'll notice, after this amendment, that doesn't exactly go to plan. But it's written there in the Constitution that African Americans can now be citizens, so they should have the right to free speech. They have the right to bear arms. They have the right to attorney or a jury if they wanted to. All the rights that we have in the Bill of Rights, they now have. So they should be treated equally. Okay, now this becomes a little bit different. Shanika put, yeah, pretty good, Shanika. All right, so you guys are all on the same page. The only thing I would highlight is the citizenship stuff. Because once you're a citizen of this country, you start getting more rights, so to speak. All right, good. 1850 was straightforward. The rights of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any account on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. The Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. So this one's pretty straightforward. African American, Shanika, correct. Ales, I'm going to put that in big letters. Now vote. Go back and read what it says. Your right to vote shall not be abridged or denied on account of race, color, or if you were a slave. Does not talk anything about gender at this point. In 1870, when this law comes out, women do not have the right to vote. All right, women will get the right to vote later on in the 1920s. We will look at how that unfolds in this class later on. But it's just African American males have the right to vote. So I want to make sure that is abundantly clear. So now, technically speaking, African Americans have pretty much the same rights as white people in the year 1870. Part of what we see what happens with Reconstruction, because you guys, I'm sure, are familiar with segregation. I'm sure you're familiar with Martin Luther King. The laws are written a certain way. It should be good. But things do not go that well in American history for African Americans from this point on, but things do get better. Okay, and that is a huge step. We went from African Americans being slaves to now being pretty much considered and equal to a white as a white person, all right, which is a great thing. All right. The analysis questions, if you do not do them already, you need to just finish them up for homework, okay? For question one, how does life change for Black people after these amendments? What are some things that are going to be different for them? Number two, a little bit harder, but how does life change for white people after these amendments? How is their life going to be differently? What if you were a former slave owner, okay? If you did this already, that's good. Amendment 3 is an opinion question, all right? So you can't get that one wrong. Just give me an opinion. And 4 is the really tough question, okay? See if you can make a connection from what we learned in the Civil War to this Amendment 13, and we go from there, all right? So that's it for the rest of the class. You got about 2 minutes left, so you want to hang and work on these. But if not, you guys want to go a little bit early, that's fine too. I will see you 6th period tomorrow. You guys did a fantastic job, and make sure this is turned in by the end of the day. All right, have a great day, guys.
Bye.
All right, you too.
See you later.
Bye.
See ya.